This is a political system. It's not exactly new. It's been sort of put on steroids in the last couple of decades, made possible by the numerous ways in which you can now hide money and move it rapidly around the world. And we see a version of that now coming to the United States.
Things done under the guise of multipolarity, sovereignty. This language power is a theme in our discussion. You've also talked a lot about money. You've written about Autocracy, Inc., also Kleptocracy, Inc. What is Kleptocracy, Inc.? What is the financial element?
So a kleptocracy is a state where, where there's no distinction of any kind between the people who have money and the people who have political power. And in some states, for example, Russia, they are literally the same people. So the owners of Gazprom will have jobs in the presidential administration. Certainly that was the case for a long time. I don't know exactly what the case is now. But they will literally be the same people. So the owners of the major industries will also be the government, and they will, and they will use industry as, so Gazprom, this is the Russian state gas company, was for a long time part of Russian foreign policy. The way Gazprom invested and the way, the moves that it made around the world were part of the Russian state, even though technically speaking, Gazprom is a private company or semi-private company. And in a kleptocracy, you have oligarchs, and the oligarchs, the sort of modern definition, but it's a very old word, that the modern definition of oligarch is someone whose wealth comes from his political relationships. So he is rich because he is friends with the president, or he has good relations with the ruling party, and his wealth comes from those relationships. And this is a political system that exists. It's not exactly new. It's been sort of put on steroids in the last couple of decades, made possible, as I said, by the numerous ways in which you can now hide money and move it rapidly around the world. And we see a version of that now coming to the United States. So Elon Musk is a really interesting example of an American a lot of whose wealth comes from his relationship to the U.S. government. SpaceX and Starlink and all those companies have enormous contracts with the Pentagon. And there was a very good article in The Atlantic actually recently about how NASA which was a kind of public interest project of the American people, go to the moon, create a program, has been somehow subsumed into Starlink, which is to SpaceX, which is a private company, which is a very different thing. And so, Musk's position is very peculiar. He's obviously a private businessman and he's very wealthy and so on, but actually not all of his companies, but some of them are very dependent on these big contracts with the U.S. government. So you can see in the United States, we're also beginning to create oligarchs whose relationships to the government. It's hard to, I'd like to be a little nuanced. Of course, rich people have always been wealthy, and they've always tried to influence the government, and they've lobbied and so on. But there's Musk actually joining the government, which he did for some months, was an instance of that going to another level. So he was actually making decisions, some of which remain in place, that affected his own company. So as a political figure, whatever the head of Doge was, I was never sure what his title was. He was making decisions about, for example, government regulators who regulate Tesla and who regulate his companies. So, and some of those decisions, as I understand it, are still in force. And he was able to, he was able to create a system that was good for him. And that is an example of kleptocracy. So that's an example of a new level of corruption in the United States. Another example, a little bit different, is the example of Donald Trump's cryptocurrency company, which is, as you know, it's a meme coin company. People invest in it. They buy these Trump coins. And these are huge investments. It's billions of dollars have been invested, and the investments are made anonymously. And so presumably Trump or his family know who the investors are, but we don't. And so there are people around the world who are effectively paying Donald Trump and keeping that secret. And so whoever or however they are seeking to influence the Trump administration, we don't know. And again, the definition of kleptocracy, and actually the definition of an autocracy, is that there's an enormous amount of secrecy. We didn't know is President Putin rich? How much money does he have? Those palaces that he's built, does he own them? We have no idea, really. I mean, there's some investigative reporting that has shown some of it. But the same as Xi Jinping is also obviously very rich. His family is said to be very rich. In fact, there was some reporting done on that some years ago. But again, we don't know. So as a sign of a kleptocracy or of an autocracy, a modern autocracy, is that there's a lot of secrecy around money. And we don't know who's influencing the president. We don't know who's influencing his family. And those are practices that have been invented in the autocratic world, and we see them now being imported into the U.S. and other democracies.